Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
Tommy Nation Politics.
Peace, and welcome to the Atlanta School for Gifted Youngsters. Today we're going to be answering the question, what is Juneteenth? Well, the first thing that's important to understand is in America, there's actually two Independence Days. The first Independence Day happened on July 4th, 1776. The second Independence Day, that happened on June 19th, 1865, which came to be known as Juneteenth. Following the Civil War, on June 19th, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger led his Union soldiers to Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War was finally over. Texas had over 250,000 enslaved people at that time. Here's the problem with that. The Emancipation Proclamation that was signed by President Abraham Lincoln was 2.5 years earlier, on January 1st, 1863. So for 2.5 years, over 250,000 enslaved people in Texas were still enslaved. So upon Major General Granger's arrival, he issued an order to the people of Texas, stating that all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. As you could imagine, many white people didn't like this. So this news of freedom became known as Independence Day for Black people in America. The first actual celebration of Juneteenth took place 1 year later in Galveston, Texas in 1866. By 1980, Texas made Juneteenth a state holiday. And in 1997, Congress declared June 19th Juneteenth Independence Day. Also in 1997, Ben Haith, who was the state director and founder of the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, designed this flag, a symbol that gives all Americans the opportunity to recognize American freedom and African American history. In this flag, you see the Star of Texas bursting with a new freedom throughout the land and over a new horizon. So the Juneteenth flag represents a new freedom, a new people, and a new star, celebrating the lineage and the history of African people and their African American contributions to society. To this day,
Tonight, Front Page Challenge welcomes the outspoken Negro leader, Malcolm X.
Sir, what's the real reason why you two men split? Is it merely ideological, or is it personality? What else?
Probably personality. It was not the statement that originally was given by the movement when we split. It's more personality than anything else.
You've called people like Martin Luther King, who just got a Nobel Peace Prize, an Uncle Tom. Is this correct, first?
Well, I'd rather say that in the States, there's a law that has recently been passed, or a decision handed down by the court, wherein if you call someone an Uncle Tom, they can sue you for libel.
Well,
so I never refer to them as Uncle Toms. I would say that Uncle Martin is my friend.
Uncle Martin is your friend, yet you would disagree with his approach to what he wants to accomplish.
Definitely. If his approach would bring about what the black man in America needs to completely eliminate the problem that we have, I would say well and good. But I very much doubt that anyone who adopts the approach that Martin Luther King has been teaching to our people in that country can point to any meaningful gains that has actually served to solve the problem.
Black Muslims have sometimes, whether you have or not, and I think probably you have sometimes, it seemed to me, been preaching hate to meet hate.
I don't advocate any kind of hate.
But there's a lot of talk that sounds very much like it.
No, I think that the guilt complex of the American white man is so profound until when you begin to analyze the real condition of the black man in America, instead of the American white man eliminating the causes that create that condition, he tries to cover it up by accusing his accusers of teaching hate. But actually, they're just exposing him for being responsible for what exists.
Well, that's something of an argument, but I've heard speeches made by some of the people of your group. I think I've heard you make speeches. It seemed to me that you were advocating what I would have to describe, I think, as violence to meet the serious injuries that have been done your people, with which I totally agree.
I don't call that violence. I don't in any way encourage black people to go out and initiate acts of aggression indiscriminately against whites. But I do believe that the black man in the United States and any human being, anywhere, is well within his right to do whatever is necessary, by any means necessary, to protect his life and property, especially in a country where the federal government itself has proven that it is either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of those human beings.
Just before Pierre takes it, you've got a pretty good fighter and the world's heavyweight champion lined up with you to help out. Yes, Pierre.
Well, Mr. X, if I guess I call you that, is that the proper appellation,
Yes.
Mr. X? I'm wondering if you still believe, as I think you certainly did at the time you were allied to the Black Muslim movement, in a segregated black nation
No.
in North America.
I don't believe in any form of segregation or any form of racism. I'm against any form of segregation and against racism.
Is it, am I right in saying that the Black Muslim movement, which you have left, did believe in that?
Well, Elijah Muhammad taught his followers that the only solution was a separate state for black people. And as long as I thought he genuinely believed that himself, I believed in him and believed in his solution. But when I began to doubt that he himself believed that that was feasible, and I saw no kind of action designed to bring it into existence or bring it about, then I turned in a different direction.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people. But at the same time that I believe in this brotherhood, I don't believe in forcing my desire for brotherhood upon those who aren't willing to accept it.
Of course, I think the Christians would say that they also believed in brotherhood. What did you say to that?
I'd say they believe in it, but don't practice it.
That'd be a pretty good answer.
Sir, when the muezzin goes up in the minaret twice a day, he cries to the world, there is but one God, and he is Allah. Do you deny that there is a Christian God?
The muezzin does this 5 times a day.
5 times, and I only heard him twice.
Well, you were fortunate to hear him twice. But he does this 5 times a day, and the same God that he says that he expresses the existence of is the God that the Christians profess to believe in themselves, and the God that the Jews believe in. One God, the creator of the universe. The Muslims believe in the God that created the universe, and I think the Christians do, and the Jews do. Now, as long as all of them are talking about the creator, the Jews may call him Jehovah, and Christians may have another name for him. Those who are Arabic-speaking refer to him as Allah. Well, we believe in the same God.
Now, as the Muslim religion advances in the United States, are you modernizing it or sticking with the old faiths? For example, the complete segregation of the sexes.
I think that everything today on this earth is being modernized. Religious principles and practices, as well as political and other things.
Now, when you went to Mecca, this is a very sacred and forbidden city. I tried to get to Mecca myself and certainly didn't make it, not being a Muslim. But how would they accept you as one? You're an American. There are few American Muslims.
This is true, and by being an American and not having not being able to speak the Arabic language, I did strike a snag, a very serious snag, but I was fortunate to have been pretty well known by the officials in Arabia, and they knew too that I had accepted Orthodox Islam. It had been highly publicized in the paper, and I became a guest of the state. I was a guest of Prince Faisal, the present King Faisal, and they made it possible for me to go before the committee, Hajj committee or Hajj court, who examines you and asks you questions about your belief, and if you pass it, then you are okay to go to Mecca. But it's
You would
true.
have to have a translator then.
Oh, I had one. Then realizing that our problem in America, that we are black Americans, and we have a problem that goes beyond religion, we formed a group known as the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And the objective of this organization, it's non-religious, number one. Any Negro can belong to it. And the objective of that organization is to bring about a condition that will guarantee respect and recognition of the 22 million black Americans as human beings. We feel that the problem, number one, of the black man in America is beyond America's ability to solve. It's a human problem, not an American problem or a Negro problem. And as a human problem or a world problem, we feel that it should be taken out of the jurisdiction of the United States government and the United States courts and taken into the United Nations in the same manner that the problems of the black man in South Africa, Angola, and other parts of the world, and even the way they're trying to bring the problems of the Jews in Russia into the United Nations because of violation of human rights. We believe that our problem is one not of violation of civil rights, but a violation of human rights. Not only are we denied the right to be a citizen in the United States, we're denied the right to be a human being.
Mr. X, may I thank you very much for coming on our program and perhaps clearing away some of the cobwebs of misconception that some of us might have had about your belief. And I think you're a very sincere man, and it takes a lot of courage to admit a former belief is wrong, and we congratulate you for that and the service you performed tonight in giving us your views. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
Tommy Nation Politics.
Please have a seat. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So throughout history, Juneteenth has been known by many names: Jubilee Day, Freedom Day, Liberation Day, Emancipation Day, and today, a national holiday. And looking out across this room, I see the advocates, the activists, the leaders who have been calling for this day for so long, including the one and only Miss Opal Lee. Who just received a very submission from the President of the United States. And I see Congress, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, members of the United States Senate who passed this bill unanimously, and all of whom collectively were responsible for delivering this bill to the President's desk. And I thank you all. We thank you all, your nation. Thanks you all. And you know, when we establish a national holiday, it makes an important statement. National holidays are something important. These are days when we as a nation have decided to stop and take stock, and often to acknowledge our history. And so as we establish Juneteenth as our newest national holiday, let us be clear about what happened on June 19th, 1865, the day we call Juneteenth. Because you see, that day was not the end of slavery in America. Yes, on that day, the enslaved people of Galveston, Texas, learned that they were free, but in fact, 2.5 years earlier, the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery in the Confederacy. So think about that. For more than 2 years, the enslaved people of Texas were kept in servitude. For more than 2 years, they were intentionally kept from their freedom. For more than 2 years. summer day, 156 years, the enslaved people of Texas learned the news. They learned that they were free, and they claimed their freedom. It was an important day. Still, let us also remember that day was not the end of slavery in America. The truth is, it would be 6 more months before the 13th Amendment was ratified, before enslaved people in the South and the North were free. So as we commemorate the history of Juneteenth, as we did just weeks ago with the history of the Tulsa Race Massacre, we must learn from our history, and we must teach our children our history, because it is part of our history as a nation. It is part of American history. So let me end by saying this. We are gathered here in a house built by enslaved people. We are footsteps away from where President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And we are here to witness President Joe Biden establish Juneteenth as a national day. We have come far, and we have far to go, but today is a day of celebration. It is not only a day of pride, it is a day for us to reaffirm and rededicate ourselves to action. And with that, I say, happy Juneteenth, everybody. And with that, I introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Madam Vice President. 100 years ago, 156 years, June 19th, 1865. John, thanks for being here. Major General of the Union Army arrived in Galveston, Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation and free the last enslaved Americans in Texas from bondage. The day, as you know, and we repeat some of what was said, became known as Juneteenth. You all know that. A day that reflects what the Psalm tells us. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh. Juneteenth marks both the long, hard night of slavery and subjugation and a promise of a bright morning to come. This is a day of profound, in my view, profound weight and profound power. A day in which we remember the moral stain, the terrible that slavery took on the country and continues to take. What I've long called America's original sin. At the same time, I also remember the extraordinary capacity to heal and to hope and to emerge from those painful moments in a bitter, bitter version of ourselves, but to make a better version of ourselves. And today, we consecrate Juneteenth for what it ought to be, what it must be, a national holiday. As the Vice President noted, a holiday that will join the others of our national celebrations, our independence, our laborers who built this nation, our servicemen who served and died in its defense, and the first new national since the creation of Martin Luther King holiday nearly 4 decades ago. I'm grateful to the members of Congress here today, in particular the Congressional Black Caucus, who did so much to make this day possible. I'm especially pleased that we showed the nation that we can come together as Democrats and Republicans to commemorate this day with an overwhelming bipartisan support of the Congress. I hope this is the beginning of a change in the way we deal with one another. And we're blessed to mark the day in the presence of Miss Opal Lee. As my mother said, God love her. I had the honor of meeting her in Nevada more than a year ago. She told me, and I believed it. I wanted to believe it. Well, you're incredible. A daughter of Texas, grandmother of the movement to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Ms. Opal is, you won't believe it, she's 49 years old. Or 94 years old, but you are an incredible woman, Ms. Opal, you really are. As a child growing up in Texas, she and her family would celebrate Juneteenth. And Juneteenth, 1939, when she was 12 years old, a white mob torched her family home. But such hate never stopped her, any more than it stopped the vast majority of you I'm looking at from this podium. Over the course of decades, she's made it her mission to see that this day came. It was almost a singular mission. She's walked for miles and miles, literally and figuratively, to bring attention to Juneteenth, to make this day possible. I ask once again, we all stand and give her a warm welcome to the way. As they still say in the Senate, and I said for 36 years, if you excuse me for a point of personal privilege, as I was walking down, I regret that my grandchildren aren't here, because this is a really, really, really important moment in our history. By making Juneteenth a federal holiday, all Americans can feel the power they and learn from our history and celebrate progress and grapple with the distance we've come, but this we have to travel, Jim. You know, I said a few weeks ago, marking the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, great nations don't ignore painful moments. Great nations don't ignore their most painful moments. They don't ignore those moments in the past. They embrace them. Great nations don't walk away. We come to terms with me. Remembering those moments, we begin to heal and grow stronger. It's simply not enough just to commemorate Juneteenth. After all, the emancipation didn't mark the end of America's work. Promise. It only marked the beginning. To honor the true meaning of Juneteenth, we have to continue toward that promise. We're not there yet. The Vice President and I and our entire administration and all of you in this room are committed to doing just that. That's why we've launched an aggressive effort to combat racial discrimination in housing. Finally address the cruel fact that a home owned to this day by a Black American family is usually a praise rate for a similar home owned by a white family in a similar area. That's why we committed to increasing Black home ownership, one of the biggest drivers of generational wealth. That's why we're making it possible for more Black entrepreneurs to access capital. Lack the capital.
Peace, and welcome to the Atlanta School for Gifted Youngsters. Today we're going to be answering the question, what is Juneteenth? Well, the first thing that's important to understand is in America, there's actually two Independence Days. The first Independence Day happened on July 4th, 1776. The second Independence Day That happened on June 19, 1865, which came to be known as Juneteenth. Following the Civil War, on June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger led his Union soldiers to Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War was finally over. Texas had over 250,000 enslaved people at that time. Here's the problem with that. The Emancipation Proclamation that was signed by President Abraham Lincoln was 2.5 years earlier, on January 1st, 1863. So for 2.5 years, over 250,000 enslaved people in Texas were still enslaved. So upon Major General Granger's arrival, he issued an order to the people of Texas, stating that all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. As you could imagine, many white people didn't like this. So this news of freedom became known as Independence Day for Black people in America. The first actual celebration of Juneteenth took place 1 year later in Galveston, Texas in 1866. By 1980, Texas made Juneteenth a state holiday. And in 1997, Congress declared June 19th Juneteenth Independence Day. Also in 1997, Ben Haith, who was the state director and founder of the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, designed this flag, a symbol that gives all Americans the opportunity to recognize American freedom and
It only marked the beginning. The true meaning of Juneteenth to continue, because we've not gotten there yet. The Vice President and I and our administration, and all of you in this room, doing just that. That's why we've launched an aggressive effort to combat racial discrimination in housing. Finally,
liberals who have posed as our friends, white liberals who have been eager to point out what the white men in the South has been doing to us, while they themselves here in the North are doing the same thing. They have been making a great fuss over the South, only to blind us to what is happening here in the North. And now that the eyes of America's 20 million blacks can easily see that this white fox here in the North is even more cruel and vicious than the white wolf in the South. The Southern wolves always let you know where you stand. But these Northern foxes pose as white liberals. They pose as your friend, pose as your benefactor, pose as your employer. They pose as your landlord. They pose as the neighborhood merchant. They pose as your lawyer trying to help you. They infiltrate all your organizations, and in this manner, by joining you, they strangle your militant efforts toward freedom, toward justice, and toward equality. They use integration for infiltration. Throughout America, here in the North as well as the South, masses of black people are demonstrating against the oppression and exploitation of the white man. Our people have lost all fear of the white man. They have ceased trying to waste their love on the white man. And they have ceased turning their nonviolent cheek to the violent white man. And because of this new, fearless, more militant attitude on the part of our people, we see the increase of violence and bloodshed between the white oppressor and the oppressed, between the white exploiter and the exploited, between the white slave master and his 20 million ex-slaves. And where will all of this end?
Juneteenth. After all, the emancipation of enslaved black Americans didn't mark the end of his work to deliver on the promise of equality. It only marked the beginning. To honor the true meaning of Juneteenth, We have to continue toward that promise because we've not gotten there yet. The Vice President and I and our entire administration, all of you in this room, are committed to doing just that. That's why we've launched an aggressive effort to combat racial discrimination in housing. Finally address the cruel fact that a home owned to this day by a Black American family is usually appraised at a low rate for a similar home owned by a white family in a similar area. That's why we committed to increasing Black home ownership, one of the biggest drivers of generational wealth. That's why we're making for more Black entrepreneurs to access capital, because their ideas is good capital to get their fair share of federal contracts so they can begin to build wealth. That's why we're working to give each and every child 3 and 4 years of age, not daycare, but school, a school. That's why we're unlocking the incredibly creative and innovation of our historical Black colleges and universities, providing them with the resources to invest in research centers, laboratories, to help HBCU graduates prepare and compete for good-paying jobs in the future. Folks, the promise of equality is not going to be until we becomes real in our schools and on our main streets and in our neighborhoods. Our healthcare system and ensuring that equity is at the heart of our fight against the pandemic. Water that comes out of our faucets and the air that we breathe in our communities, and our justice system, so that we can fulfill the promise of America for all people, all of our people. And it's not fulfilled so long as the sacred right to vote remains under attack. We see this assault from restrictive laws, threats of intimidation, voter purges, and more. An assault that offends the very democracy, our very democracy. We can't rest until the promise of equality is fulfilled for every one of us in every corner of this nation. That, to me, is the meaning of Juneteenth. That's what it's about. So let's make this very Juneteenth, tomorrow, the first that our nation will celebrate all together as one nation. A Juneteenth of action on many fronts. One of those is vaccination. Tomorrow, the Vice President will be in Atlanta on a bus tour helping to spread the word, like all of you have been doing, on life-saving vaccines. And across the country this weekend, including here in Washington, people will be canvassing and hosting events in their communities, going door to door, encouraging vaccinations. We've built equity into the heart of the vaccination program from day one, but we still have more work to do to close the racial gap in vaccination rates. The more we can do that, the more we can save lives. Today also marks the 6th anniversary of the tragic deaths at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina. A killer, motivated by hate, intending to start a race war in South Carolina. He joined his victims in a Bible study class. Then he took their lives in a house of worship. It's a reminder that our work to root out hate never ends, because hate only hides. It never fully goes away, it hides. And when you breathe oxygen under that rock, it comes out. And that's what we must understand, that Juneteenth represents not only the commemoration of the end of slavery in America more than 150 years ago, but the ongoing work they have to bring true equity and racial justice into American society, which we can do. In short, this day doesn't just celebrate the past. It calls for action today. I wish all Americans a happy Juneteenth. I'm certainly in a moment, going to sign into law, making it a federal holiday. And I have to say to you, I've only been president for several months, but I think this will go down for me as one of the greatest honors I will have had as president, not because I did it, you did it. Democrats and Republicans. But it's an enormous, enormous. Thank you for what you've done. And by the way, typical of most of us in Congress and Senate, I went down the other end of the hall first to thank your staffs, because I know who does the hard work. No, they're down there. They're at the other end, but I thank them as well. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite up Senator Tina Smith, Senator Ed Markey, Senator Raphael, Senator John Cornyn, Whip John Clyburn, Representative Barbara Lee, Representative Dan, Chair Joyce Beatty, and Sheila Jackson Lee, and Miss Opal.
Just stand.
You should have my chair. No? Okay. All right.
That's the first one.
I understand how Barack did it.
He did it for
Make sure. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Got three more in my name. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got for sure. There's a man. Texas. Anybody else?
Dan. Oh,
Yeah, okay, man, I'm sorry, man.
Congressman Davis.
Thank you, man. All right.
to the bottom of the bottle. I've been drowning, I've been floating away. Every other dollar that I got in bed, I probably went instant away. I ain't fucking okay. I ain't locking, I don't even wanna talk. I'm smoking my haze. I've been stuck in my way, stuck in for days. I've been staring at the clock as the radio plays. I'm enslaved. Yeah, rolling another, I'm stuck in my seat from the whole control of my speech. Yeah, I've been trying to get off this couch for a minute and a whole damn week. No kidding, I'm skinny, I cannot eat. Got a million motherfuckers that depend on me. Yeah, every friend in my family, from a girl, every fan I meet myself. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down to make new thoughts, like jumping off of that rooftop. Hold my devil when I do not make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's out, steadily killing me. Running brain full of shame, I don't wanna lose it. Full of stage, trying to find my pain. I see the sun coming out of that rain. Mine's really not tame, I'ma never slow down, I'ma never behave. Stuck inside this prison, inside this cage, it's taking over. Yeah, I'm a slave for you. I'm a slave for you. Ripping hard and more less. Never stop, no rest. Till the stress is breath in my chest. Till it's diamonds wrapping my ass. To a god from a goddamn mess. Whole place, more tests. More dug deep down trying to find my best. Find a beast, had to kill a conquest. I'm next. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down to make new thoughts. Like jumping off of that rooftop. Hold my devil when I do enough to make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's your time. Steadily killing me, running my brain full of shame. I don't wanna lose it. I'm full of stage trying to find my pain. I see something coming out of that rain. My team with my team. I'ma never slow down, I'ma never behave. This prison inside this cage taking over. Yeah, I'm a slave for you.
What up, guys? How's it going? Happy Juneteenth. It's Top Nation Politics. This is Top Nation Politics, free game, creative, totally open media. And we are witnessing some historic political events happening. Although, to be fair and to be completely open-minded, one has to go back to the past. Remember how we got to this moment. I've seen a lot of different people, mostly in the mainstream media, talk about how millennials are stupid, they don't understand history. Bill Maher, for one. They don't, before you, life was around before you. You're so entitled. Millennials, you don't get it. You don't understand history. I think that Bill Maher and others could be right and wrong about that, but I do have one caveat to that. I have the caveat that Bill Maher is so, he's been in this world so long, like most others that I observe. And y'all get on the chat, by the way. If you disagree with me, y'all, good discourse reasoning and logic, they actually help in forming my opinions. I'm a free thinker. What free thought is, guys, it's thought that doesn't have anything to do with religious bondage. It doesn't have to do with any kind of man-made tool mentally that they put in your mind to get you to think the way that they want you to think. Like case in point, guys. Anytime you're mentioning the military and we're going over there to invade countries, and you say we're fighting for freedom, that signals to me that you guys are in the INCSOC. You're in the orthodoxy. You are in the system. That's what you're thinking, and you're not a free thinker. So there's little phrases that I pick up on because I've been in this world long enough to know the phrases, but not long enough to where I'm lost in the system. I've seen a lot of older people get lost in the system, guys. I've seen Bill Maher, he literally lost his show because he talked about the Iraq War, how that was wrong, right? And then now smoking marijuana, very progressive. Now he defends Israel and Netanyahu. He defends the establishment, and he feels like all the millennials are entitled. You live in this world long enough, you start to get lost in the system, guys. I've seen it so many times. Bernie Sanders endorsing Hillary Clinton. You live in the system long enough, guys. It's like I always say, you don't change the Democratic and Republican Party. The Republican and Democratic Party, they change you. That's what ends up happening. It scares me. When I was a little kid, I used to watch one of my favorite superheroes, besides Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, was Peter Pan. I wanted to be Peter Pan so bad. Me and Michael Jackson, we have that in common. I don't know what he meant by that, but I just didn't want to be old. I didn't want to lack energy. I didn't want to lack curiosity. Because I saw what happens to the older people. They say the same things, they tell their stories, the same stories, and they're lost in the system. I saw it from an early age. It was probably one of the first things that depressed me about the social construct that we're in. How orthodoxy finally catches up to you, and it wins. Peter Pan escaped that. He always was a little boy. He left the social construct. He went to Neverland. He got to be. He didn't have a 9-to-5 job. He didn't have bills. He had adventures. And to me, guys, living is the best adventure. Living is the greatest adventure. Living is supposed to be everything because it's so short, and you have to take advantage of it. The Romans used to say carpe diem, right? Seize the day. Carpe diem. Well, ever since we've embarked on technological advances, one of our first being the exploration of the New World in the Western Hemisphere. Started by the Vikings in Newfoundland and Eric the Red, and preceding the British colonial imperialism, and the enslavement of Africans. For a caveat, I just want to the right-wingers are going to get mad at me if I don't say this. Yes, the African tribes helped in enslaving Africans. True. But you guys are one thing. Okay? Slavery was a different kind of thing in Europe. Okay, back in Jesus' time, slavery was like you were a member of the family. You were supposed to treat your slave well. In fact, they got wages. Slaves did. They had wages. They had gifts. And their children they grew up alongside. There were no beatings. I mean, I'm sure there were, but not like this, guys. Literally, in this enslaving endeavor, we took slavery to a whole new level. And I believe it was the first pangs of a crony capitalist, vulture capitalist society that we now have. And that was the start, guys, of the end is the beginning of the end. For the longest time, guys, we haven't amended our Constitution. Our Constitution is a living document, giving us the tools for adventures. You know what the tools are? life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We haven't had that. Not for everyone. Not since the beginning. But it's in the Constitution. And we have the ability, as human beings who can change, who can grow, who can evolve, who can think, who have free will. We have the ability to amend our path. And that's what the amendments were for in our Constitution. It was to show that we could be wrong, and we could change our minds. We could emancipate ourselves from the conventional wisdom and the social norms. We haven't done that in a long time. And in the course of letting two evils run our country, the only logical result of that was that now evil is running the country. Whether it be the lesser of two evils or the bigger of two evils, evil wins. So the 13th Amendment, guys, was passed in January 31st, 1865. Ratified December 6th, 1865. The 13th Amendment changed a portion of Article 4, Section 2. Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except. Now here's the fine print, guys. Except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, guys. Listen to this in Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for crime. What is crime? Crime is man-made law. What was the law? Who made the laws? Did white supremacy make the laws? Isn't it interesting, guys? There was this saying that Native Americans used to say, white men speak with forked tongue. White men speak with forked tongue. Neither slave nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime. Well, this is all too convenient, guys. We can now that we have freedom, now that we've abolished slavery, we're going to change the language. You're no longer a slave. You're an indentured servant. No, you're no longer an indentured servant. You're an employee. No, you're no longer an employee. You're actually a criminal. Why are you a criminal? You smoked the devil's lettuce. You went ahead and went against our laws. Our man-made, white supremacist, systemically racist laws. I'm going to get you up in front of all white jury, and I'm going to fucking Emmett Till you. I'm going to Rodney King you. I'm going to Malcolm X you. I'm going to Martin Luther King you. I'm going to call the FBI on you. You're a threat. You're a commie. You're a Nazi. You're a socialist. You're a label. You're the other. You're a fear. You're killing my children. Mask above your nose, please. Please comply. And so the beat goes on, guys. And so the end is the beginning of the end, guys. And so the end is the beginning of the end. I've seen this story before, guys. And what's even more, I think what's alarming me the most is I'm 30. I'm old now. I'm about to go celebrate Pride right now. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet with my friends Elliot and Jen Bush. We're going to go downtown to Dallas Arts District. We're going to have some dinner. We're going to be on a rooftop. And we're going to shout about freedom. Trevor Joseph, he taught me a lot about my gay history, my own history. You know, all of our movements, guys, they were originated and they were changed. The only people that fundamentally changed anything were the people that were willing to go all the way for their beliefs, guys. Willing to die for them. Martin Luther King said, I've been on the mountaintop. Malcolm X, famously, he criticized his own teacher, Elijah Muhammad, which might have led to his death. Or it could have been the FBI. Who knows? But Black lives didn't really matter back then. Although the same shuck and jive of white liberal continues, you hear Joe Biden in his speech talk about how we're going to... Again, just like the last speech, I've heard every speech Joe Biden's made, guys, since he's been president. It's all been about what we can't forget our history. Kamala Harris, I was born in a protest. What are they pushing for? Nothing. Are they talking Black Lives Matter? No. Is police reform and legislation? No. Nothing is fundamentally changing, guys. And so, as my brethren, the leftists who have succumbed to the Democratic Party talking points, they seem to think that just give it time. Just give it time, guys. He's working on it. He's negotiating with us. Guys, I saw it with Obama. He only passed Obamacare's first term. You fooled me once. Shame on you. Fooled me twice. Shame on me. I won't be fooled again, guys. I'm sorry that you are, but you're wrong. And this administration, as Trump revealed the discourse, decorum, conventional wisdom, and social norms of our political class was a sham, a joke. Joe Biden will reveal to you that nothing will ever fundamentally change. I hope it does. But then again, you guys have the memory of a fruit fly, so I can't hold my breath. Let's continue to read this 13th Amendment, guys. It's full of fun surprises. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. What has Congress done to enforce this abolishment of slavery? Well, they've chosen to make a national holiday. I mean, should Juneteenth be a national holiday? Maybe. Will that help? Will that raise black wealth? Will that destroy the systemically racist justice system? Will that reform the dogs property of the rich, the police state? Will that destroy the surveillance state? Will that give us our liberties, freedoms, and pursuit of happiness back? Will it? Or is this nothing but a distraction? I don't know if you heard the last reporter's question after he signed the bill. She said, will the election, will the voting, will election day now be a national holiday, Mr. Biden? Biden refused to answer. In this speech, Biden pushed his fight with the Republican Party on the voting laws. He continued to use us as a political football to pursue his agenda on the vaccinations. And we're literally, guys, there's nothing that Malcolm X has ever said that has been wrong. It's surreal to me. Every time I go back to his tapes, we are a political football only used to enforce the agenda in the fight between the white liberals and the white conservatives. Am I racist when I say that? No. Not. Making an observation. I don't think all white people are horrible. I don't think all black people are good. Believe me, they don't tip well. So a lot of them. As a waiter, I'll have to say that. It is what it is, guys. You point these things out. You're not racist. You're just making an observation. Now, let me tell you what observations do. They can form constructive criticism to get people to make progressive and fundamental change. This cancel culture is the opposite of progressivism. Just let y'all know. If you don't criticize, if you don't dissent, if you don't criticize. Now, I'm learning that perspective is a lot. I'm learning that attitude is a lot, and where you're coming from is a lot. I'm learning if I call you cucks, you might not be receptive to my message, even though you might be cucks. I might be right, but are you going to listen to me? No. So you got to change the messaging. Obama was right. He spent millions of dollars in beer summits and fucking photo ops to do that. I'm not going to go all the way. I'm not going to go Obama's way. But I did learn a lot from Barack Obama. I learned that sometimes you got to play the game. You got to play. I'm going to play the game so good, guys, that I'm going to change the rules afterwards. After I win it. We're not winning, guys. We're not changing anything. I don't say it is a depressing thing. I'm saying it as a constructive criticism because we're alive today. We have the ability, this adventure, this gift called life. We have the ability to change things, our own destinies. Jonah, bro. Paul of Tarsus, Damascus, Tarsus. Paul Tarsus. All through the Bible, all through any story of humanity, any story. Aesop's fables, the Odyssey. One man is confronted with his own destiny. Orpheus, he's confronted with his own destiny, and he has the ability, the power to fight the gods themselves, to write his own history, to be the commander of his own ship and destiny. I'm asking us to do that. I'm asking us to do that hardcore. Joe Biden was right about one thing in this speech. The fight isn't over. Sadly, the fight has not begun. I'm calling to action. I'm doing a real call to action for us to take Juneteenth, to take Stonewall, these momentous events that happened, that now we celebrate Pride and celebrate Juneteenth in this one month, guys. This has been a fantastic month. I'm going to go celebrate right now. But guys, don't just dwell upon the flowery rhetoric. Don't dwell upon empty words and promises of a neoliberal narcissist warmonger. I call upon you guys to be the change, to take this life and make it the best adventure you can. Who knows? Maybe with the distraction, take from bills and 9 to 5 and congressional approvals and warmongering presidents. Maybe we get your mind off that and focus on the change that you can bring. Maybe guys, it'll happen. Maybe we can do it. Yes, we can.